Hi, this is a video for English 102, 103, and 105. We are moving from folders 2, 3, and 4 to folder 5. I had a few comments about the work in 2, 3, and 4 that I'll get to in talking about folder 5. All the folders, as you know, are in this rest of the semester folder. Scroll down. Topic 5 or folder 5 is where we're working in topic groups to begin to annotate sources and to find two sources that you're going to critique in your source critique. Everything that we do after this week builds on what we do this week. So if you look ahead, you'll see that in folder 6, a week from now, I'm looking for you to post a draft of the source critique and to review another's critique. This will mean that you cannot wait until the 19th next week to post your draft because you need to review someone's draft by the 19th. So next week you'll have two tasks. One will be to post a draft before Wednesday. The other will be to review at least one other student's draft between Wednesday and Sunday. Now some drafts will come in after Wednesday. That means there's a lesser chance that they will be reviewed, and that includes not only by other students but by me. I will not review every draft, but I will be commenting on drafts that have already received reviews. So it will be very much to your advantage next week to come in before Wednesday, drop a draft, and then work on reviewing it, and I can follow up on that. And the same will go 2 weeks from now when we're moving toward the end of April. You will not want to wait until the 26th to post your revision. You're going to want to review someone's revision that's posted preferably by Wednesday of that week. So I noticed a lot of people were working fairly early in the week this week, which was good. But also if you go into folders 2, 3, and 4, you'll see a lot of people, a few people were waiting until later in the week and even the final hours of the week. That's not an ideal way to work. You want to pace yourself. You want to be in Blackboard 2, 3, probably 3 or 4 times at a minimum, even if all you're doing is reading what other people do before you post. You have lots of good examples from people who are jumping right into things. So after this week, you'll be doing a lot of writing. What we're doing this week is we're finding things to write about. So in this folder, there are 3 topic groups. I want you to work in one group. You can read what other people are doing in other groups, but it's totally fine to choose one topic group and join it. Now some of you I know already have topics that you're interested in. I tried to keep those in mind over the break where everything changed and came up with 3 groups. And hopefully you've already looked at these groups, but I wanted to briefly go over them. So one of the topic groups is on the science of COVID-19. The articles that I posted there are a month old. There's lots of newer research and lots of newer journalism and lots of newer opinion on what's going on with the new coronavirus. So you are going to find more current things. Some of them may be from the web, if you can find good material on the web, but as a lot of you have noted, the databases are going to be where we're going to find good material. So one of the groups will be to look at what is the latest science on COVID-19, and maybe even on a specific question about COVID-19. What kind of masks will protect me? How does social distancing work? Plenty of topics to think about there. Another topic area, a lot of you had questions or possible topics that have to do with questions of health, but also with your generation. So I put a few articles in this Health in Your Generation folder. Same deal. You're going to be performing the same 3 tasks that are performed in other groups. And then there were a number of students that are interested in media, social media, and technology. And so this kind of corner is this folder is a good one to think about some questions there. So I'm not going to open all of these now. I'm going to go to the COVID-19 one just to show you what's in the folder. So you have 3 tasks this week at minimum. The first task is to read the starter articles and post with questions. You don't have to answer the questions, but you want to post with questions that you think that somebody who's read the article carefully should be able to answer. So think of yourself as quizzing a reader on what they should gather from the article. Now think about Toolman. What is the claim? What kinds of evidence is offered? How has a rebuttal been considered? What seems to be the motive? If you want to use Toolman to come up with your questions about the articles, that would be a way to structure your questions in a useful way. Right? And you'll see that here I have 3 articles. Gorman talking about the math of virus and how viruses move, how that's a mathematical question that we can predict and understand. Grady and Thomas that are looking at the question of how much evidence is enough. And then an interview with an expert, 10 questions for Dr. Pio, and this is from TED-Med. You'll notice that there's this funny little icon off to the side. Those of you who had trouble opening a PDF last week, and there were a couple of students in each class, not the majority of the class, but a couple. If you ever have problem opening a PDF, if it doesn't open for you instantly, if you click on the alternatives format, that'll give it to you in other formats that you might be more easily able to open. So the first task will be to read an article. So I'm just going to pull up Dr. Piot's interview, and you'll see that it opens in this window here. And immediately I see this is 12 pages long. Do I want to commit to 12 pages? Well, I am asking you to read all 3 articles in each folder, all 2 or 3 articles in each folder. But you'll see the first page here is an introduction, and then we get 100 questions with an expert. Now, one of the things that you could do in evaluating this would be to look up who is this Peter Piot, right? We're told that he is the director of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, right? That he's he's been interviewed by the director of the TED-Med Foundation, Jay Walker. You might not care about finding out about Jay Walker, but who is this Peter Piot? This gives me a window. I could now even just go to Google, put in his name, put in this title, look into who this person is, see what comes up. Right? Now, the way that this one is structured is, as it says, 100 questions. So this one might be interesting to read because it doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end in an obvious way, but it has question, answer, question, answer. So reading an interview format can go quickly, even if it is 12 pages. Now, if I want to see, what do these pages look like, you can see question, answer, some very brief answers, some longer answers. And we should bear in mind that these questions and answers are from about a month ago. So are they still up to date? Probably more up to date than I know because of who he is. But this is certainly an expert I could look at. I'm scrolling down to see, it's all question and answer format to the end. So this one might be fairly straightforward to read because it doesn't have an introduction, a body, a conclusion. It's structured in this particular way. If I were to read through that, I could come up with a few questions that I think that someone who has read it carefully should be able to answer. I'm just going to open a different one so we can see a difference. This piece is from the New York Times, right? So it's written by journalists. Journalists are not experts. Journalists work using Goldman's questions in order to evaluate information, but journalists are not the sources of information in an article. Journalists are just the outlet. They're how we get to it. So I want to find who are the sources that are mentioned in this article. And so I might start the article, which this one's shorter. It's only 3 pages, piece of journalism. So I see that our journalists, Grady and Thomas, and I could look them up and see who they are, what do they specialize in. They start by talking about President Trump. I don't think that President Trump is an expert about coronavirus. This is why we have an FDA. Presidents tend to be not to be scientists, so they need the FDA, they need CDC, they need other groups in order to look at things, in order to understand them in a critical way. So we can look at, well, if President Trump is not a source, who are the sources for any statement that President Trump might be making? And the source, as you can see, is questioning Trump's use of evidence, right? So they're looking at how the FDA is studying malaria drugs for coronavirus. And this is an interesting question for us today. Can drugs that are used to treat malaria treat the coronavirus? That's the question I want to know the answer to. And so if we scroll down, we can start to look for, here's a company that's mentioned. Here are some doctors that are mentioned. I could start by looking for the who, right? Because I want to not only hear what a president might say at a podium, but I want to know who are the people that are making doing the research or making the claims that would inform what a politician has to say, right? And we see that so far only Mr. Trump has been quoted. There's references to some folks in the news. Finally, we get a doctor, right? We get references to hospitals. We get references to other institutions. And we see that this Dr. Hahn keeps coming up. So we might look for who is this Dr. Hahn. In fact, once I know a name and a place, I can look something up about that person. Now, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to look something up about a person? Well, that's because my first task here for you this week, 5A, is to read the articles and to read all the articles that are here, post with questions that you think a reasonable person should be able to answer. And then, 2 other tasks in this group. These tasks are going to take more time than the first task. 5B, you want to find 2 sources and comment on them. You want to comment on them using Goldman, ideally, from Palucci, although that's ideally. I think more practically, use the trap test or the crap test. Use Toolman to comment on 2 sources that you find, preferably from the college databases, but you may find something very good from the web, in which case you could use 1 from the web and 1 from the databases. Now, you've done some work in the library last week, so you want to build on that to find 2 sources and comment. And in your comments, you might think about what's the claim, what's the evidence, is it credible? In fact, you might think of 4 questions. Where is this coming from? What are they claiming? What evidence supports the claim? Is it credible? I'm going to write that down so I remember it. Where is it coming from, or who's saying it? Who and where? What's the claim? What's the evidence? Is it credible? Now, as some students have noted, what makes something credible could be seen as objective or subjective. And so in my comments here, I'm going to be pushing back a little bit on what you say. I might play devil's advocate, and I would invite you to do the same. In fact, I think it might go without saying, but you should follow up on what people write to you. Right? Don't just let it sit there. If you go back into folders 2, 3, and 4, you'll see that there are questions that have been asked, maybe even questions that have been asked of you or comments that you haven't followed up on. You may want to follow up on those. It might seem like busy work, but it's a way to engage yourself in the class. One more point that I'll make is that the easiest task this week, and this is probably the only task that you could save till the weekend, is identify 2 sources among those that have been gathered here that you want to analyze in the paper, the source critique that you'll be writing starting early next week. And I'm asking that one could be a source that you found, but one of them should be a source that another student has found. So you're going to need to rely on other people. So the simplest task of the week is identifying 2 sources. That could wait for the weekend. 5A should not wait for the weekend. You should try to read the articles today, tomorrow, before Wednesday, Thursday at the latest, and post with questions. But this one is going to take you time to find 2 sources and comment. You're not just going to take the first 2 sources you find. You're not going to want to do that. You want to find sources that you think are worth your attention, and that takes a little time. Consider everything that you learned about the library last week and apply it here. Right? So this is folder 5. You're joining one of these 3 topic groups. You're participating in 3 tasks, 2 that really need to get underway pronto, and 1 task that could wait till the weekend. I'll check in with you and follow up, and I'll be putting notices in Starfish too to let you know how I think you're doing. Stay safe, and I hope you're all right.